A mafia boss ruled the city with fear, but even his power and money couldn't save his only son. After thousands of doctors failed, hope was gone, until a poor delivery girl walked into the hospital room. What happened next shocked everyone, and proved that sometimes healing doesn't come from medicine but from love. Nicholas's small body lay on the wide white hospital bed, so tiny it looked as though the sheets might swallow him whole. Machines beeped around him, steady but lifeless, like a cruel reminder that he was still here but not truly living. His father, Watson, the man feared by the entire city, sat silently by the bedside, his strong hands trembling as he held the boy's pale fingers. Watson was only 36, but the heavy weight of grief had already carved deep shadows under his eyes. To the world, he was untouchable, a mafia boss whose name could freeze the bravest man's heart. But here, under the cold hospital lights, he was nothing more than a broken father praying for a miracle. Every corridor of that hospital had echoed with the footsteps of specialists flown in from across the world. One by one they had come, carrying briefcases of knowledge, faces full of confidence. And one by one they had left, shaking their heads, whispering words Watson hated more than bullets. "We are sorry, we can do nothing." Watson had spent millions. He had bribed, threatened, begged. He had made promises he never thought he'd make. Yet Nicholas remained the same, silent, unmoving, staring at ceilings with eyes that looked far older than 7. At night, when the hospital halls grew quiet, Watson would lean close to his son and whisper, "Nicholas, it's me, your father. Please. Just one word, just one smile. I'll give up everything if you'll just come back to me." His voice cracked, though he never let his men see his tears. A mafia boss could never appear weak, but a father had already been destroyed. The nurses whispered when they passed by. They had seen many parents in pain, but nothing like this. The mafia boss who once brought fear to every street corner now sat motionless beside a child who wouldn't respond. Some said it was fate, some said punishment. But Watson didn't believe in curses. He believed in fighting, yet this was the one battle he could not win. Every new sunrise brought him the same agony. He would watch Nicholas's chest rise and fall and wonder if his boy even knew he was there. Sometimes he feared his son's silence was more than illness. It was a choice, a retreat into a world where Watson couldn't follow. Watson's empire of power, money, and control meant nothing inside those hospital walls. He could command hundreds of men, but he could not command his son to live. He could buy the world, but not a single smile from Nicholas. And so the most feared man in the city sat helpless, trapped in a sterile white room, waiting for a miracle that seemed impossible. He didn't know it yet. But fate was about to send that miracle in the most unexpected form. A poor delivery girl whose footsteps would one day echo louder than the 1,000 doctors who had already failed. Jennifer adjusted the strap of her worn-out delivery bag as she hurried through the hospital corridors. Her sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, her breath quick from running up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. She never wanted to waste time when people were waiting for food. She wasn't rich, not even close. Every dollar she earned mattered. She worked long hours, delivering meals to strangers, often skipping her own. That night, her order slip had the hospital's name printed on it. She thought it was just another late shift, drop the food, smile, and leave. But fate had planned something very different. Clutching the warm bag close, Jennifer wandered the hallways, trying to find the right ward. Her tired eyes misread the signs, and she stopped in front of a door guarded by 2 men in black suits. Their presence was intimidating, their stares sharp. For a moment, Jennifer thought she had gone to the wrong place. But before she could step back, the door creaked open, and she caught a glimpse inside. A young boy sat on the bed, small and fragile, with dark hair falling into his hollow eyes. His toy car rested lifelessly in his lap. He didn't move, didn't blink. He looked like a child frozen in time. Jennifer's heart squeezed. Something inside her refused to walk away. Slowly, she stepped forward, whispering to the guards. "Just delivering food." They exchanged looks, but let her pass. Maybe they thought she was harmless, just another tired delivery girl. As she entered the room, the hospital's usual chill felt sharper. Machines hummed quietly, filling the silence. She placed the food on a side table, but her eyes kept drifting to the boy. He looked so lonely, so heartbreakingly silent, that Jennifer forgot about the delivery slip in her pocket. She crouched down gently, her voice soft like she was speaking to a frightened bird. "Hey there! That's a cool toy you've got. Can I see it?" At first, there was nothing. The boy just stared at her with those empty, hollow eyes. Jennifer almost stood up, embarrassed for intruding. But then, so slight, so small, his hand twitched. His tiny fingers moved the toy car an inch closer to her. Jennifer froze. It wasn't much, but it was something. A response. A connection. She felt her chest tighten, her throat sting. "Thank you," she whispered, smiling warmly. The nurses outside exchanged gasps. They had never seen Nicholas respond to anyone before. And then a shadow fell across the doorway. Watson stepped inside. His presence filled the room like thunderclouds rolling in. His tall frame, sharp suit, and cold eyes made Jennifer's heart skip. She hadn't known who lived in this room, but now she realized this was not just any patient's father. This was him, the Mafia boss. Jennifer's breath caught. Her knees felt weak. She wanted to explain, to apologize, but Watson's gaze was locked not on her, but on his son. Nicholas's tiny hand was still stretched toward Jennifer, toy car pressed into her palm. For the first time in years, the boy had reached for someone. Watson's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in disbelief. His silence was louder than any shout, heavier than any threat. Jennifer stood frozen, her heart racing. She had no idea what this meant, or what this dangerous man would do to her for stepping into his son's world. But deep inside, she felt it already. This moment was not a mistake. It was destiny. The poor delivery girl had unknowingly walked into the life of the most feared man in the city, and in the process had awakened something in his son that 1,000 doctors had failed to touch. Watson's shoes clicked against the cold hospital floor as he stepped farther into the room, his broad shoulders casting a heavy shadow over the frail boy and the delivery girl. The air thickened instantly. Nurses held their breath in the hallway. Everyone knew his temper. One wrong move could turn calm into chaos. Jennifer's chest tightened. She clutched the small toy car Nicholas had pushed into her hand, her palms trembling. She had never been so close to someone so dangerous. His icy eyes scanned her like a hunter watching prey. "Who are you?" His voice was deep, sharp, and demanding. It wasn't just a question. It was a warning. Jennifer swallowed hard. I'm Jennifer. I came to deliver food. I didn't mean to intrude. But your son, he looked like he needed someone to talk to." The silence that followed stretched unbearably. Watson's jaw clenched, his fists flexing at his sides. Every instinct told her to run, but her heart wouldn't let her. Something about Nicholas's fragile frame kept her rooted to the spot. The guards outside had already tensed, waiting for their boss's signal. A single nod from him could end Jennifer's story right here. But before Watson could speak, a tiny voice broke the silence. "Stay." It was a whisper, so faint it almost vanished in the hum of the machines. But it was real. Nicholas had spoken. His first word in years. Jennifer's eyes widened, filling with tears. Her lips parted, stunned. She looked at the boy, then at his father. Watson froze. His cold mask shattered for just a second. His head snapped toward Nicholas, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "What did you say?" he whispered, stepping closer to his son. Nicholas's lips trembled. His little hands reached out, not for his father, not for the nurses, but for Jennifer. Watson's chest constricted, a storm raging inside him. He had begged, cried, and offered the world for a sound from his son. And now, the first word Nicholas uttered was for a stranger. A poor delivery girl with tired eyes and calloused hands. He turned back to Jennifer, suspicion blazing. "What did you do to him?" His voice was rough, demanding, like he needed an answer that made sense. Jennifer shook her head quickly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't do anything. I just spoke to him, that's all. I treated him like he mattered." Watson's eyes darkened. "You're saying my son doesn't matter?" Her voice quivered but grew stronger. "Not like that. I mean, I think he doesn't need more medicine or silence. He needs warmth. He needs love." Her words hung in the air like fragile glass. No one had dared speak to Watson like that. No one. But instead of rage, something else stirred in him. A crack in his icy armor. He looked at Jennifer again, longer this time. Her clothes were simple, her shoes worn, but her eyes carried a gentleness he hadn't seen in years. Still, his suspicion didn't fade. He leaned closer, his voice dangerously low. "If you're lying, if you hurt him in any way, you won't leave this hospital alive." Jennifer nodded, her voice steady despite the fear in her veins. "Then I won't leave, because I'm not here to hurt him. I'm here to help." For a long moment, silence reigned. The Mafia boss and the delivery girl stood face to face, both stubborn in their own way. But behind them, Nicholas clutched his blanket, eyes shining with a light no one had seen before. And that light was enough. For now, Watson allowed her to stay. The next morning, Jennifer thought she would never see that hospital room again. She assumed the powerful man would never allow her near his son after last night. She even convinced herself it was better that way. After all, who was she to step into the life of a Mafia boss? But fate had other plans. When her shift ended that evening, 2 black cars waited outside her small apartment. Men in dark suits stepped out. Jennifer's heart nearly stopped. She thought it was the end. But instead, one of them spoke firmly. "The boss wants you at the hospital. Now." Fear surged through her body, but stronger than fear was the memory of Nicholas's tiny voice whispering, "Stay." That memory gave her courage. When she entered the hospital room again, Nicholas's eyes lit up instantly. He threw off his blanket and sat straighter, waiting. Jennifer's heart melted. It was the first time she had seen excitement in him. Watson stood by the window, watching closely. His gaze was cold, calculating, but there was a trace of something softer hidden deep inside. He didn't speak. He simply nodded toward the boy. Jennifer smiled gently, kneeling beside Nicholas's bed. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. "I brought something today." It was a paper airplane. She had made it on her lunch break, remembering how children love to see things fly. She flicked the airplane gently into the air, and it glided across the room before landing on the floor. Nicholas's lips twitched. Then, for the first time in years, he giggled, a small, broken laugh, but real. Jennifer's eyes welled up. "You like it?" she asked softly. Nicholas reached out and whispered, "Again." From the corner, Watson's heart clenched. His son's voice was weak but alive. He had begged for this moment, prayed for it. And here it was, delivered not by doctors or medicines, but by this simple girl who folded paper into wings. Day after day, Jennifer returned. Sometimes she brought crayons and sketched silly drawings. Sometimes she told short stories, her hands moving animatedly. Sometimes she simply sat in silence, holding Nicholas's hand so he wouldn't feel alone. And every day something changed. Nicholas began to smile more. He whispered small words: bird, play, happy. His laughter filled the sterile hospital room, transforming it into a place of life instead of despair. Watson watched from the background, his chest torn in ways he couldn't explain. He had always believed money could fix everything, but no amount of wealth had healed his boy. Only Jennifer's patience, her kindness, had done what thousands of treatments couldn't. One evening, as Jennifer showed Nicholas how to draw a flower, the boy whispered again, louder this time, "Mom." Jennifer froze. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't know whether to correct him or just hold him. Slowly, she leaned forward and hugged him gently, whispering, "I'll always be here, sweetheart." Watson turned away quickly, hiding the tears burning his eyes. He clenched his fists, not out of anger, but out of the overwhelming flood of emotions he didn't know how to handle. Nicholas had found his light, and that light was Jennifer. The miracle the Mafia boss had prayed for had finally arrived, not through power, not through science, but through the simple, unshakable bond between a poor girl and a lonely child. And deep down, Watson began to realize something terrifying, yet beautiful. He was not just watching his son heal. He was slowly being healed too. Watson had always been a man of power. His name feared in every corner of the city. But now, sitting at the edge of Nicholas's bed, he looked nothing like the feared Mafia boss. His broad shoulders slumped, his eyes red, and his hands trembling as if the entire weight of the world pressed down on him. He wasn't thinking about power, or money, or enemies. He was only thinking about his little boy, the one person who had managed to break the walls around his heart. Nicholas lay on the bed, his tiny chest rising and falling with a strange, shallow rhythm. The silence in the room was broken only by the faint sound of his weak breathing. Watson's lips pressed into a hard line as he brushed the boy's blonde hair back. His voice cracked, whispering words only a father's heart could understand. "Stay with me, son. Don't leave me. You're all I have." Jennifer stood a few steps away, watching the scene unfold. She had never seen such vulnerability in a man like Watson. He was the kind of man the world whispered about in fear, but in this moment he was simply a father drowning in pain. Her chest tightened at the sight. Something inside her, something she didn't even know she carried, pulled her closer to the boy. Her delivery bag still rested by the door, forgotten, because now her hands ached to help. She sat beside Nicholas, her gentle fingers reaching out to touch his little hand. His skin was cool, fragile, almost lifeless. Jennifer swallowed hard, her heart pounding, but she forced a soft smile as she whispered to him, "Hey, sweetheart. I'm Jennifer. You don't know me, but I'm here now. You're not alone." Watson's eyes snapped toward her. He wasn't used to strangers intruding into his private pain. His instinct screamed to push her away, to protect his son from anyone uninvited. But something about the calm warmth in her voice stopped him. Her words weren't polished, not like the doctors he had begged and paid. They were simple, human, filled with a love that made him feel something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Jennifer leaned closer, brushing Nicholas's forehead softly, almost like a lullaby touch. "I know you're tired, little one," she whispered, "but your daddy needs you. He's strong, but without you, his world is empty." Watson clenched his fists, emotions tearing him apart. Every doctor had spoken in complicated terms, their language cold, clinical, and hopeless. But this woman, her voice carried life. It carried warmth. He couldn't explain it, but his son's breathing seemed to ease ever so slightly, as if Nicholas recognized her presence. Jennifer's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She remembered her own lonely childhood. Nobody had been there to whisper to her, nobody to hold her when fear consumed her nights. Looking at Nicholas, she swore silently that she wouldn't let him feel that same emptiness. She would pour every ounce of kindness she had into him, even if it was just for tonight. Watson shifted, unable to hold back his trembling voice. Why are you doing this?" His tone was rough, almost broken. "You don't even know us." Jennifer looked at him, her voice steady yet soft. "Because pain doesn't ask who you are before it enters your life. And love doesn't ask permission before it heals." Her words sank into Watson's heart like fire melting ice. He stared at her, this poor delivery girl who had walked into his world by accident, yet in minutes she had given him something no one else could: a reason to believe. Nicholas's tiny hand twitched, as if trying to hold hers. Jennifer gasped softly, gripping his fingers gently. Watson leaned forward, eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in months, his son had responded. And in that fragile moment, surrounded by silence and shadows, Watson realized something shocking. Perhaps healing didn't come from money, or from power, or from doctors. Perhaps it came from a heart willing to love without asking for anything in return. The room that once felt heavy with despair now carried a fragile light, as if hope itself had slipped through the cracks of Watson's dark world. Nicholas's tiny fingers curled around Jennifer's hand, and in that simple touch, life seemed to pulse back into his body. Watson leaned closer, unable to look away. For weeks he had begged the best doctors, spent fortunes, threatened anyone who failed, but no one had brought this reaction. And yet, a poor delivery girl had done it with nothing more than love in her voice. Jennifer's eyes welled with tears as she stroked the boy's soft hair. "You're safe now, Nicholas. Just breathe with me, one little breath at a time," she whispered, her voice steady, like a soft lullaby breaking through the silence. She hummed gently, a tune she remembered from her own childhood, a tune she once sang to herself to survive lonely nights. Now, that same melody wrapped around Nicholas, calming his fragile heart. Watson's chest tightened. He had built his empire on fear and strength, but here he sat, helpless, watching his son respond to something he could never buy. His voice broke, the words escaping before he could stop them. "Don't leave him, please. Whatever it takes, stay by his side." Jennifer turned her gaze toward him, her blue eyes glowing with something both fierce and tender. "I wasn't planning on leaving," she said softly. "He needs more than medicine. He needs someone who believes he can fight." The words hit Watson deep, shaking him in ways he didn't expect. For years he had believed only in power, in control, in money. But here, sitting in front of him, was a woman with nothing yet offering everything. Hope, care, and the one thing he hadn't felt in years, warmth. Nicholas stirred again, his little lips moving as if he wanted to say something. Watson leaned down, desperate to hear his son's voice, but only a faint whisper escaped. Jennifer caught it first. "Daddy," Nicholas breathed weakly, his first word in days. Tears burned Watson's eyes. His hardened heart cracked open as he pressed his forehead against his son's. He hadn't cried in years. Not even when facing death, but now his tears flowed freely. He held Nicholas's tiny hand, his voice trembling. "I'm here, son. I'm not going anywhere. You're going to be okay." Jennifer placed her hand gently on Watson's shoulder. For a moment, the feared Mafia boss didn't feel alone. Her touch was careful, almost hesitant, but it carried strength. Watson looked at her, his voice husky, raw with gratitude. "You healed what thousands couldn't. You gave me back my son." Jennifer shook her head, her lips curving into a faint, tender smile. "No, he healed because love reached him. You've always been his father, Watson. He needed to hear your heart more than the doctor's words." Watson stared at her in silence, her words sinking into the deepest part of him. Love, a word he had buried long ago in a world where weakness wasn't allowed. Yet here it was, alive in Jennifer, alive in his son. Nicholas's breathing steadied, his small body relaxing into a peaceful slumber. Watson brushed a kiss across his son's forehead, his heart overflowing with emotions he could barely name. When he lifted his gaze back to Jennifer, he knew something had changed forever. In her, he saw not just the woman who had saved his son, but the one who had cracked his walls, showing him a truth he had denied his whole life, that healing doesn't always come from power, it comes from love. Jennifer stood to leave, but Watson caught her wrist gently, his grip firm yet trembling. His voice lowered, filled with vulnerability he had never shown another soul. "Don't go, Jennifer. I need you. Not just for him, but for me too." Her breath caught in her throat, her heart racing at the raw plea in his words. She saw a man once feared by all, now stripped of his armor, opening his soul to her. And as Nicholas slept peacefully between them, a silent promise bloomed in the room. a promise of second chances, of healing beyond medicine, of love that could conquer even the coldest, darkest lives.